You can't imagine the headaches I've had. In fact, part of the reason that sometimes I don't get enough YouTube videos out is because I've had these headaches quite a bit.
Is worrying about meticulous accuracy versus material accuracy. So this is kind of something that I've seen for those of you perfectionists out there. You want everything perfect down to the penny. And when it comes to accounting, you really have to consider the cost versus the benefit. So in small business accounting, there's this tension, right, between being efficient and being accurate. So there are certain things that, like, I use an example of with inventory. You could calculate your inventory costs down to the penny or to the dollar, right? In a lot of cases, with inventory particularly, you have to think about, okay, if I calculate my inventory cost to the penny rather than the dollar, how much usefulness am I going to get out of that? And then you have to compare that with, okay, well, how much extra time is it going to take me to do those calculations? So let's say you calculate to the penny rather than the dollar. If you only benefit by a marginal amount, but it takes you 5 times more effort and energy and time to calculate that, well, then you're losing that money. The benefit is completely outweighed by the cost. So that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about doing accounting, particularly. This kind of goes back to like the reporting revenue by SKU versus an aggregate. Like if you try to be too meticulous with your accuracy, you end up spending a lot more time than if you just post stuff in aggregate. So kind of that goal is here. You want to be accurate, but only to the point that it's still useful. So, you know, how much extra time is it going to take to add an extra decimal on your accuracy? That's really something to keep in mind. And kind of, I want to wrap it up, and sorry about that missing slide. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about where to learn more. So, you know, like Liz said, accounting is such an integral part, and if the reality is the longer you wait, the bigger the mountain is you're going to have to climb. And so kind of what I did is over the last 3 years, I've created what I call the Zoom system. And it's Zoom because my #1 goal is how can we automate this as much as possible? But the reality is I've created a really efficient system that balances accounting automation with some of the manual process, really streamlined and manual processes that you still have to do because the software hasn't quite caught up. And so really what we did is we made the mistakes. We tried too much manual processes. We tried too much automation. And what we learned is right now, about 75% of the accounting process for Amazon sellers, you can totally automate it. But the other 25% is still pretty manual. And so what we did was we've created really some options for Amazon sellers to implement our system, right? And so really kind of the 2 offers, and this is you kind of my offer, but also how you can implement this today is you really have a do-it-yourself option and you have a done-for-you option. So for those of you that are just getting started, it really is going to make a lot of sense to take a course to learn the ins and outs. It's about a 5-hour course. It teaches you how to set up the accounting system and then how to run it day to day. And it teaches you about all the automation, how to set it up, but then also the manual processes and how to work those at month end. And so actually one of the things I did for Liz, just as a thank you to you guys and just, you know, real thankful for the opportunity to meet y'all. I built in a 20% off. And so you can go check out kind of that offer and all the details about the Zoom system, about the platform that we use and all the ins and outs of that offer. If you want to lock in 20%, you can go to hurricanebonus.com/accounting. And then for those of you that have kind of grown a little bit and really like a good mark to think about is about $30K a month in recurring sales outside of Q4. It really starts to make a lot more sense to have someone handle that. And so for a lot of, we actually have a lot of students that go through our course and then they scale and they realize, hey, I want to outsource this. So we offer outsourced services. And one of the things we did was we wanted to offer you guys, if you're looking to outsource, we're building in an offer for 10% off for the first 12 months of services. And all you have to do is go ahead and mention me. So you check out my website, museminded.com, and you just hit a contact form. We'll have a conversation together and mention that Liz brought you here, and we'll get you hooked up with a $10% off for the first 12 months. And so that kind of wraps up my little short lesson today on kind of the 7 pitfalls. And actually, if you want to go ahead and check out today's notes, I have bit.ly/bookkeeping pitfalls. Actually, I turned all of my notes into kind of a really nice little PDF. I know there's a lot of data here, a lot of details. So if you want to go back, I'm sure you have notes and you want to compare my notes to yours, go ahead and check out that link and download that PDF. But really, I think Liz and I agree. We kind of want to open up the floor for questions and really, what are some of those accounting and bookkeeping issues or software issues, questions that you have? I'd love to kind of glean some insight on that based on kind of my time just investing in the Amazon community and accounting community. So
right, and I think I love what you put together, Jeremiah. I thought it was amazing, and actually, honestly, I remember as you were going through those, I remember that a lot of those do not do things. Like I'd done probably all of them. I already know 3 off the top of my head. I forgot what the last one was, but I committed every single one of them. And I think one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on here, and I feel so strongly about this, is because this is something that I looked through and you taught me a lot, but you just taught me a lesson right now. I'm always confused as to how much I should put aside for taxes, because it seems like wanting to grow your Amazon business, it can become a very difficult thing once you start making some bigger numbers, because of the fact that you want to reinvest in product, but and you're making money, but you just don't know like how much. It's budgeting becomes an issue as you get higher on up. But the thing that I liked was that you kind of hit the nail on the head with those pitfalls, because I know for a fact 3 out of the 4 I had committed for sure. I don't recall what the 4th one was off the top of my head, but the first 3 were so like, oh yeah, like I did that,
The 4th one was sales tax. So there's a lot of confusion I find in the sales tax arena, and just some folks kind of keep their head in the sand, and some folks, they get signed up for these huge service packages to comply in a million different states and really put a huge strain on their business way too early.
Right, and there's already some questions. So Joseph asks, how much manual labor for a do-it-yourselfer?
And I'm guessing, like, how much time does it take if you do it yourself? Like, once, here's how to answer that. So to get the system up and running, I'd say it's going to take you probably a good 2 to 4 weeks just to digest the material and implement, just getting the system set up. And what I'm assuming is you got your own business running, you're going to commit maybe an hour here, a couple hours there. I find it usually takes about 2, 3, 4 weeks at that kind of pace. If you want to set aside a whole week just to knock this out, you could totally get it done in a week in terms of building the system and getting the pieces of the puzzle put together. But here's what I really love about this system is once it's together, set up and running, that bookkeeping process, especially if you're small, it really is about 30 minutes, an hour tops. I'd be really surprised once you go through a month or 2 the process and you get it going. And Liz, maybe you can give some insight here. Is really the manual labor part of it is really 30 minutes, 45 minutes per month. And honestly, it could be faster if you're a bit smaller. So
right. It does also depend, Jeremiah, on how far behind. If Joseph is far behind and he chooses to do it himself, it could have it could be quite a bit of time for you to catch up if you're way behind. So that's one thing to consider. But I actually did the setup. I just sat down and did it through in one straight day, and it was set up. And that was I had 2 Xero accounts at the time. I was managing 2 different things at once. So I sat down one day and I just committed to doing it all within one day. Then I just started to like reconcile for so much time every day and do things like that. The cash coding that you teach and all that good stuff. And that might be foreign words. I might be saying foreign words to people that are out there, but it's all very thoroughly explained in the system. And really that's what it is at the end of the day. It's a system that you set up, and it literally, when you take all the steps that he says, it leaves very little things for you actually to have to do. So that's really all I can say.
Oh, totally. And one thing I'll kind of plug in that is kind of with all my courses too, I add in some support time. So it really is a very streamlined and efficient system. But there will inevitably be like 1 or 2 little small things that you may run across that's kind of unique to your business and your model or your particular situation. So we build in about an hour of support time to all of our courses. So it's not one of those like you sign up for it and then we leave you hanging. Good luck if you didn't understand it. So like I said, I'm really committed to making sure you not only set it up, but then you implement it. And this is what you're using 12 months from now, and you don't just hop from one accounting platform to another.
Right. So I'm getting a couple questions. Maybe you can answer this. Is this useful for Amazon sellers incorporated in other countries? Do you have anything for that?
Great question. So there are a few differences. So I've actually had some Chinese sellers and some Asian sellers. I can recall one I've spent a good bit of time with, who's from China, that sort of they implemented it. One thing I'll say is, particularly like I've had some UK folks reach out to us, and I don't really cover VAT if that's something that you're looking for. I mean, you can always hit me up in some support, and I can help you understand what I've gleaned so far with handling. Really, this system is pretty universal. Like accounting processes are really pretty universal, and the platform that we use is called Xero. It's a global platform, so you can totally set it up no matter where you're from. And the actual accounting processes are pretty much all the same. The more I think about it, though, the tax side is really kind of where it gets a little sticky. So if you have VAT or value-added tax in Europe, or I have some Australians that have GST, this course doesn't quite go into some of that. But anyways, I say I've had international sellers, but it's not 100% applicable. If I don't want to oversell it, for sure.
Right. And for those of you guys that are not familiar with Xero, Xero is it's super awesome. It's like cloud-based accounting, and you can give logins to your accountant or your bookkeeper or anybody else that you want to. And basically it's saved on the cloud, and the updates are all done in the cloud. So it's not like saved to your desktop. I think Jeremiah was talking about that earlier. You mentioned that most people are still using, or a lot of even accountants are still using the old systems where they work off of a desktop, and I guess they have like a computer program that they order from some company. But more and more nowadays, people are going on the cloud. So could you explain just a little bit more about why you like Xero over everything else?
Yeah, great question. The tech stack I use is really something that we've kind of, I'm actually a tech junkie. I love learning about different pieces of software, and really in the accounting market, there's on kind of the lower end, a lot of folks have heard of GoDaddy bookkeeping, and that's a pretty legitimate software. But really, I'd say in the market, there's stuff like GoDaddy, there's Wave Apps, and then at the higher end, there's really like Xero, and there's QuickBooks Online, and we kind of tested all of these and checked them out. And for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. One reason for Xero is what you mentioned. It was actually really one of the first big entrants to the cloud accounting market. So it actually started in New Zealand and moved to Australia, took over Australia, then the UK, and now it's starting to take over the US. And QuickBooks Online is another cloud-based software, but actually all of their stuff is really, it was built off the cloud, and then they're trying to translate it too. So there's some bugs that you encounter, but Xero's built from the cloud to collaborate. If you need to bring folks in, you have partners or accountants you want to bring in, it all happens in real time. You like don't ever have to worry about saving a file to your computer and emailing it and passcodes and version issues. None of that happens. And really the coolest thing for me though is it talks to other software. So with being cloud-based, there's all these are integrations that you can bring in that start to bring data over. And on that, actually on the page at hurricanebonus.com/accounting, you can learn more about the tech stack and what integrations it actually works with. But the other really cool thing is Xero is super, super efficient. So Liz kind of name dropped this idea of cache coding. There's a couple of like really cool power user features that they're like a 1-2 punch. With a couple of clicks, you can literally categorize and reconcile all of your books with one, like not all your books, but about 60-70% of your books with 1 or 2 clicks every month. It's features like that are just a huge reason why we decided to double down and focus on this one platform called Xero.
Right, and I gotta say, I love Xero. I was told about Xero a long time ago, but you know, I just never could figure out how to use it, Jeremiah, until I went through your course, which is the honest truth. But now it's just like, I love it because mine's up to date and I know what's going on. And I still don't know how to use the entire thing, but I can sort of figure it out. So I sort of know where the numbers are that I need. And I know like about cache coding and all that stuff. And I can say these fancy names and know what the hell I'm talking about for change.
Right on. Yeah.
So I kind of sound like a nerd, but I'm not, guys. I don't know any of this stuff. I learned it through his course. So Chris asks a great question, and I actually know the answer to this, but I'll let you answer it. If I've already commingled accounts and I stop doing that now, could I still bring the transactions in from the personal accounts come tax time?
You sure can. So, and actually in the course, I mentioned the exact process to do that. So there is a way to, it requires a little bit of extra work on your end of like kind of separating personal from business, but once you separate those out, there's a way you can definitely import it and get that. So you're not you can all have it in Xero, no doubt.
Okay, great. So I actually was guilty of the commingling, so I've done that before. I have brought them in, like he said, using the way he showed on the actual course. Rajdeep says, is it still worth doing the course to help me in the UK minus the tax stuff?
Honestly, yes, I do think it is. And here's one of the things that goes back to like, I'm committed to offering value, not just making money, is if you go through the course, and I basically offer a complete money back deal. So if you go through that, Raj, and for some reason it doesn't seem applicable to you, I don't want your money in that case if you're not going to use it. But I will say this, I actually had a UK accountant that wanted to start doing Amazon accounting for clients, and he took my course to kind of learn my system and process, and now he implements it with his own clients. So you know, I'm not an expert on the intricacies of tax law on that, but I'll say I have students that have gone through and I've only gotten good feedback.
Right. I actually think I'm going to answer that and say that I think it is definitely useful no matter what, because it teaches you about not tax basics, but accounting basics. He shows you how to set it all up so your numbers will still be in there. And if you basically go to a UK accountant, he's going to ask you things like, what was your revenue and what did you spend on expenses? What I'm still assuming, is that not a worldwide principle?
No, that's the truth. It's just like, for example, some of my courses I discuss, I tell you like, okay, here's some common transactions and this is how I treat them. There might be a little bit here and there. For example, the laws around if you have meals and buy meals and entertainment, those laws are a little bit different here. And so maybe in the UK, your UK accountant would want you to categorize your meals and entertainment a slightly different way than I recommend. But without a doubt, like the core idea and the process is pretty much universally applicable. Yeah, so you're totally right. They're going to ask you, what are your revenue, what are your expenses, and that's all covered here.
Right. And if you got that all together and you're not scrambling, pulling all these Amazon reports at the last minute and then adding up your receipts, or you got them on a spreadsheet, then you're going to be like pretty well organized come like tax time, however it is in the UK. Teresa asked, how do we get it set up for sales tax? Do you offer any services for that, Jeremiah?
Great question. So I'm actually in the process. I have a tax partner that we use for all our income tax and sales tax. And at the end of the day, accountants love to be a one-stop shop, but the reality of being a one-stop shop is it's almost impossible to do that. You really need to specialize, and we've specialized on the accounting technology side of things and the bookkeeping side of things. What we did is we vetted tax partners for the sales tax and the income tax side. And actually, I'm about to launch some stuff on my website. We've got some cool stuff with package deals. But if you want to check out a company called Ampersand Accounting, that's actually our kind of that's our trusted tax partner that we use for all of our clients and that we recommend. And they're really, really good guys. And actually, if you come check out my website in probably about a week, you'll see all that information. So that's how I'd answer that.
Rajdeep says, is there advice techniques to improve cash flow?
Yeah, there are definitely some techniques. One thing I'll say here is I'm actually really glad you asked that. I think by far one of the most helpful things that I've seen, we're actually about to launch something in our own firm, a cash flow system. So a systematic way that as you get your Amazon payouts, what do you do with that cash? Like, how much should you pay yourself? How much should that go to inventory? It just gives you a framework for understanding how to distribute your cash. And it uses kind of a bucket system. It's really fascinating. And so I wish I had that in place right now. I could just point you straight to that resource. One of the really cool things actually recently, I'm not sure what your business model is, but if you're importing from overseas, one of the really interesting things that we've been playing around with our clients is stocking inventory for less time and just buying it more frequently. So kind of what the client that we were working with, they were buying inventory for 3 months at a time. And actually that inventory, he has kind of like high costs for his SKUs. So he was actually having so much trouble stocking out. He was coming in and out of stock, losing so much money in sales. And then one day I stopped and asked him, I was like, hey buddy, like, what if you bought for every 2 weeks rather than every 3 months, and just on a clockwork schedule every 2 weeks, you just reorder. And we actually have a system that we use for our clients to it's a resource planning system that we use to help them with their cash flow. And actually that changed the whole picture. So where before he was going to have to probably take out about a $30,000 loan to float himself for these huge inventory orders, so he never stocked out again, we just changed his down to 2 weeks instead. And he doesn't have, not only does he not have to take out a loan anymore, but because of the terms that he has with his suppliers, he starts making money now before he actually finishes paying for his inventory. Anyways, that's one thing. I'm not sure if that's totally applicable to your business model. But I guess another, the biggest issue, I think, as a summary for cash flow is if you don't know how to use the cash that comes in, like what you should set aside for taxes, what you should set aside for your own compensation, etc. If you don't have an idea of buckets and where to go with that, you're going to feel like you're always out of control. And it's not so much that there's techniques that you can do to improve your cash flow, as that you just need to know how to handle your cash flow so you're not getting into crunches, if that makes sense. So There's a lot I could say on that. And honestly, I think, Liz, I'd love to set up another time just to discuss that, that one topic, because I think there's a huge amount of value there for sellers new and established.
Yeah, absolutely. We could do that at a later time. That sounds fantastic. Actually, I would like to hear about that myself. We got some more questions. Suleiman asks, for me, do you know anyone who has recently been engaged for dietary supplements? We know how to do beauty, Suleiman. We don't have supplements down though yet. So beauty, yes. Supplements, no. Mike says, I live in Hong Kong. How will this work? I think we kind of answered that, Mike. It'll work for you with the general principles in place, but as far as particular advice within Hong Kong, that's something that you'll have to find an accountant in Hong Kong. But the general principles remain the same. Our website, again, it is hurricanebonus.com/accounting. That's the website, Beth. Trevor asked, can this work for people sell? Okay, we answered that, Trevor. QuickBooks, Jeremiah also answered that, how is QuickBooks versus Xero? Are there any tax advantages for a seller in the U.S. to set up an overseas corporation and sell on Amazon through that overseas entity? Norman asks.
Norman, great question. Honestly, it's a little bit out of my pay grade. I'm not a tax expert, as I mentioned before. That may be something you want to consult. I dropped Ampersand Accounting as our kind of tax partner. One thing I'll say is just my opinion and just my limited understanding is there can be some advantages, but you have to be careful. Like kind of what I've just been hearing a little through the rumor weed is that the IRS is kind of cracking down on foreign corporations that aren't kind of, you live in the US, but your corporation is foreign. There's really too much complexity for me to properly answer it, but I do know that I have had some clients in the past that have experimented with some of that. So that's about all I can say on that front.
You know, the other thing about this, Jeremiah, is there's going to be different people that give different answers. I've got a lot of friends that have actually done it, but a lot of accountants also say that it's, like you said, it's a red flag if you actually do that, because at the end of the day, the other thing is that they have to pay themselves significantly less, and they got to spend their money overseas. So it's kind of like very complicated. I prefer to just keep my money in the USA and keep it in good old America.
Hey, here, if you're looking for a tax savings thing, you really need to, I think you should consider setting up an LLC for your business if you haven't already. And then you treat it, you file a certain form with the IRS to treat it as an S corporation. That's one of the most commonplace tax savings. And what you end up doing is you can save a lot of money on like the self-employment tax. So if you had a W-2 and were an employee, you would pay to like Social Security and FICA and all that. As a self-employed individual, you have to pay the full 15.2%. And if you set up an S corp, there's ways that part of your income will be exposed to the 15.2%, but then a whole other section of your income won't have to be exposed to that. So that's probably the most common, especially for e-commerce sellers, when it's actually a really good tax savings, a legitimate tax savings strategy.
Awesome. Let me see. For some reason, my screen, I've got the link is right here. It's hurricanebonus.com/accounting. For the people that are seriously interested in doing this, I'm thinking of putting together a bonus here to kind of get you guys to just do it. And the primary reason why is I guarantee you guys, if you guys get this set up, you're going to avoid so many headaches. Like you can't imagine the headaches I've had. In fact, part of the reason that sometimes I don't get enough YouTube videos out is because I've had these headaches quite a bit, and I just need to kind of like, it's all about outsourcing your business and concentrating on the things that you do best, which is learning more about Amazon, implementing it, and sourcing some products. That's what it kind of comes down to. Thank you once again, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you. I had a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.